Hi everyone, welcome to Beans and Skeins. My name is Chloe and this is podcast episode number 11. It has been a few weeks since I filmed. I have a lot to talk about. I have no finished objects. I have 5 whips. 2 of them are new, I think, since the last time I filmed. And I'm excited to talk about them, especially the ones at the end. The ones at the end I'm most hyped for. But I also am super excited because it's now past April 1st, which means that the A Sweater for Summer KAL that Natalie from Knit Chic and I are running is here. It's live. It's open. I don't know what the correct term is, but it's here, I guess. So from April 1st to June 30th, we are running the A Sweater for Summer KAL on Instagram and on Ravelry, and the premise is to create a summer-friendly sweater or t-shirt. And there's a bunch of different ways that you can modify patterns or the fiber that you're using to make them summer friendly. So both Natalie and I have some pattern idea videos that are on our channels, as well as Ravelry bundles. And there is a Ravelry forum. And we've definitely started having some people on Instagram partake. And so there's lots of ideas out there for things that you could make or fibers that you could use. And there will be some prizes as we go through the next few months. Those will be announced on YouTube, so nowhere else. But that will be kind of like more to come on that closer to the end of the month. Today, I am not wearing any knitwear. I was wearing knitwear and then I had to take it off because I was too warm. But I am wearing a handmade object. So this is my willow dress by Cinnamon Daisy Designs, and this is the first ever dress that I sewed. I made it last year, and I love it. I love that it was really simple to make. The only exception to that was the binding finish on the armhole and the neck, and it wasn't really complicated, it was just extremely tedious. And I don't really love tedious things, and so that was a bit of a mental struggle, but overall it was quite a simple pattern. It has pockets, and it has these cute little ties at the side, so there's like lots of room. So you cinch it in however as much as you want, and I've made this one out of Jitterbug gingham from Merchant & Mills. Given that it was my first ever dress, I don't know why I used such an expensive fabric, but I'm really glad it worked out. And I love this one. This fabric has softened really nicely over the past year, and I wear it all the time. So that's my dress. I don't share a lot about my sewing on here, and I'm hoping that over the next few months I do have lots of plans to sew more, and so I'm hoping that I can share some more stuff about my sewing. Alright, so as I mentioned, I don't have any finished objects today. I have 5 whips, and I have just had the most intense cast-on energy where I just want to cast on all of the summer projects. I love summer projects, and I think yesterday was maybe like 18 degrees here, and I went down to the park, and I sat on a blanket in the sun, and I knitted, and I looked at the ocean, and I listened to my audiobook in my sun hat. It was glorious. I had such a good time. But it's made me really excited for warmer weather and warmer weather knitwear. But I have 2 whips that I'm determined to finish up before I cast out anything else, just because they're very much winter projects, and I kind of want to get them off my needles before summer really kicks off, because I don't want them to sit on my needles all summer. So when those 2 are done, I'm just gonna pretty much give myself free rein to cast on whatever it is that I want. But one of the patterns that I really want to cast off by the end of May is my Aiode sweater by Sari Nordlund. So this is an all-over drop shoulder cable pattern from her book Softly Timeless Knits, and this is my longest standing whip ever. This has been on my needles, I think, since August of last year, so August 2024. And since the last podcast episode, oh my gosh, there's cat hair everywhere. So much cat hair. Anyway, since the last podcast episode, I have finished the first sleeve. It's only been blocked to about here, so that's why it really cinches in a little bit lower down. And then on the other side, I've cast on the first sleeve, and I'm about halfway through the first chart repeat, so there's 4 chart repeats on the sleeve, so it's kind of like the end is in sight. I have modified this pattern because when I was knitting it, when I got to the point at the end of the yoke where I was supposed to join the front and the back, and I've had this on a different Sari Nordlund pattern also, but the front yoke was way too short. And so what it was doing was it was going to create like a really weird fit. And I have a weird fit on my other Sari Nordlund cable pattern, and it really bothers me. And so on this one, I just extended the yoke on the front before I joined in the round, and I have blocked it because I wanted to see how the cables would relax before deciding how long to make the sleeves. And it's perfect. It is like a perfect fit on the front. So I'm really happy that I extended that front yoke. And I am knitting this. Oh my gosh, sorry, I'm getting so distracted by the cat hair that's everywhere. I am knitting this in a size 6, and I am knitting it on 5mm needles. Okay, well, actually, that's not true. I knit the body on 5mm needles, and then I knit the entire sleeve by accident on 4.5mm needles. But I've tried the fit, and it's fine. It fits fine. So I was like, obviously I'm gonna leave it. So I'm just knitting the other sleeve also on 4.5mm needles. And yeah, that's kind of it for sizing. I am using Quince & Co. Lark in the color Gingerbread, which is a really beautiful warm brown. And yeah, when I last showed it, I had just finished the body, and I've now knit one whole sleeve, and I'm started on the second sleeve. I've blocked this a few times because actually I haven't blocked to this side, so this is a perfect example. Because I changed the front yoke depth, it meant that when I joined in the round, my armhole was massive. And so what I did after I finished was I blocked it, I dried it, and I tried it on. And yeah, like the armhole probably came to like here. So deeper than what I wanted. So I seamed both armholes closed by about 2 centimeters, which means like decrease the circumference of the armhole by 4 centimeters. And then it also meant that because I'd made these changes, the recommended stitch count to pick up along the sleeve hole was no longer accurate. So what I ended up doing was I used my preferred pickup rate, which is 5 in every 7, and I picked up around the first armhole, and then it looked like this. So there's a definite step between this shows it better. Yeah, there we go. So there's a definite step between the body and the sleeve, and it was maybe a little bit farther than I am now, but I was looking at it and I was like, I should block it and check to make sure that it is A, gonna fit me, and B, it's not gonna have a weird transition from the body to the sleeve, which is why on this side, the start of the sleeve has been blocked and the rest of it hasn't. And at first, there is still a bit of a noticeable step that you can kind of see there, but it's only noticeable when it's flat, and it's not noticeable when it's being worn, which to me is what matters. And I sometimes don't love when a sweater has lots of ease around the body, but then there's also an enormous amount of ease on the arms. And so I actually really do like the way that this is fitting. I only got to about here, and then I blocked it. So I made sure that on the widest part of my arm, it is gonna fit. Also did not follow the recommended decrease rate for this because I have less positive ease in my sleeve than I think the regular pattern does. And so I just kind of made up my own, where I kind of decreased a few here along the bicep. I worked straight without any decreases for a while, just because this part of your arm doesn't taper as much. And then I worked more decreases here along the forearm to taper into the armhole. So that's my Aiode sweater. I'm hoping that by the next time I film, it may be done, but it may not be. I'm not promising anything. My next work in progress is my Candy Dot Throw by, Alexandra Tavel, I believe the designer's name is. I just have a quick update on this. I have done a bit of work since the last time I filmed, but not a huge amount. It's looking really nice. It's really squishy. And I may not update on this every time just because I'm not working on it a whole bunch. And this is going to be like probably a longer term project for me, just to use up these 2 advents and some sweater quantities of gray yarn that I am never going to make into a sweater. But I'm hoping that I can finish it this calendar year, and then it will be a nice throw for the couch or potentially on the bed. I think the cats will love to sit on this because it's so squishy. This is a pattern, that is free on the designer's website, so I can definitely share how the stitch pattern is made up, but it is in multiples, I think of 3, and then plus 1, I believe, is the stitch count. And it's done doing mosaic knitting. So in the contrast color, it's you slip and then slip and then knit, and then I'm not going to tell you what it is because I can't remember off the top of my head. It's been a few weeks since I've worked on it, but because it's mosaic knitting, it's really easy. It's pretty mindless, which has been really nice for watching TV. And the colors I've kind of separated out into little baggies, so it kind of will have an even color distribution. So, I won't have one section that's all blue and then no blue for the rest of the blanket. But that's where I am with my Candy Dot Throw. I'm tying off my ends as I go. Not for this most recently worked on part, so we'll remove that. But I've got the tassels forming as I go, and then at the end I will trim them to be all the same length. Sorry, I'm struggling to keep this blanket on the needles because I had to take the needles for a different project. So that's why I'm like fiddling with it so much. But I've got my tassels going here, and I'm really excited about this one. It'll be really nice. It's going to be a substantial amount of yarn to get out of stash, which I think is going to be great. And it's going to be like, I love a good blanket. I've never made a knitted blanket before. And the crochet blankets that I've made in the past were made from acrylic. And I put them through the washer and dryer one time, and they have like some burn marks from that. And it'll be really nice, I think, to maybe have a replacement for those because they're just like, they're not looking so great. And yes, so that is my Candy Dot Throw by Alexandra Tavel. All right, so my next whip is one that has had a ton of work since the last time I filmed. The last time I filmed, I had done, I believe, 3 rows, and now I've got a good chunk here. So this is my Oleander Pullover by Audrey Borrego. And this is my entry into the A Sweater for Summer KAL knit along, and I'm really loving this. So where do I even start? Because everything about it is magical. I am knitting size 6 on 3.5 millimeter needles, and I'm using the Wandering Flock Cotton Lino in the color Sand. So it's definitely blowing out. I'm right next to the window, but it is a slightly warm off-white, like a bit of a very, very light beige. I've never used this yarn before, and it is interesting because there's definitely little pieces. If I can see if I can find one that's big enough to show you. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see, but there's definitely little pieces of vegetation in here that have just been kind of spun into the yarn. So I have been picking some of the bigger ones out, but like the smaller ones, it doesn't really matter so much. You can't, like, I'm picking out the ones that feel prickly because it's like straw. I don't even think it's linen. I think it's kind of maybe like straw from the alpaca content. I don't know. So I cast this on a couple weeks before the start of the knit along just because I'm a really slow lace knitter, And this is also a tighter gauge that I normally work at. I haven't done anything at a 26 stitch gauge before, but so that's why I've gotten so far, even though it's very early on in the KAL. The pattern calls for doing 4 of the chart repeats. The chart is 30 rows long, so 4 chart repeats before splitting for the front and the back. In the pattern photos, it looks quite long. The hip, like not your hip bone, but like the widest part of your body, like a proper sweater. Because I'm making this to wear in warmer weather, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do 3 repeats of the body to bring it up to just maybe past my natural waist. And then I think that will look a little bit nicer with like the skirts that I would wear, or the shorts, or the high-waisted linen pants that I would wear in the summer. And it also means that I only have about 20 or so rows to go before I can split for the front and the back. So that's really exciting. I believe that the pattern is written like you do the top, then you pick up for the sleeves, and you knit down for the sleeves. This pattern, I'm hoping that it'll come across really nicely, but it has like a really fun scalloped edge. I mean, it's not coming across awesome there because it's not blocked and it's all cinching in, but it has a scalloped edge along the bottom because there is no ribbing. And I really think that that's cute, and like it really is summery and fun, and none of my patterns that I've knit before have that. And so what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to alter the sleeve. I'm going to cast on at the bottom and then knit up and kind of do a bind off along the armhole there. But I'm I'm losing my stitches. Oh no! Okay, crisis averted. I also have not checked, so it's possible that I just don't even know what I'm talking about. So I'll have to check back on that one. So for my size, there's over 350 stitches around the body, so it is like fairly slow progress. One chart row is probably taking me 5 to 8 minutes. I don't know. I've not timed myself. I should do that next time. I will do that next time. But it is taking me a while, so it's very much a process knit, and it's kind of like just enjoying the slow process of working this up and knowing that I'm gonna have something like really beautiful when it's done. I think that even though lace knitting is not necessarily my favorite type, like I love cables, I do like stockinette, but I think lace knitting is a skill, like it's just so pretty. And I cannot wait to wear it and then be like, I made this. Like this feels luxurious, it feels fancy, and it feels like really special, where not that stockinette sweaters don't feel special, but I think that this is something that I'm going to be incredibly proud of to have made, and I'm looking forward to that. The only real like laborious part of this pattern was the cast on edge. So the cast on edge is obviously quite a few stitches. It's 26 stitches per 10 centimeters. So like I just mentioned, over 350 stitches for my size. It calls for a German twisted cast on. Because you don't do any ribbing, you want that cast on edge to have some stretch to it. And so it calls for a German twisted cast on. And so to do the German twisted cast on and then go right into your first row of the lace chart, which has some yarn overs and some twisted stitches and some purls. Oh my gosh, like that was rough. I'm not gonna lie, that was rough. But if you can get through the first two, like the cast on edge and the first row of the lace pattern, from there it's quite simple. I do have to pay attention to the chart, but it is a bit intuitive. And so when I start a new row, I can look at the chart, be like, okay, I know what's happening, and then do that, rather than having to check the chart for every single time I'm doing a repeat. Yeah, so that's all I have to say for this at the moment. Definitely check in next time. I'm gonna be posting a little bit about this on Instagram. I cannot wait. I cannot wait to wear this. So my next whip is my first test knit of the year. test knitting less in 2025 is one of my like personal knitting goals. I did a lot of test knitting in 2024. I think I probably tested between 8 and 10 patterns. And I just this year wanted to leave more time and space for knitting things that are just for me, basically, with no like time pressure or having to think about it, or just being able to make modifications as I go rather than having to like check in with a designer. But I saw this sweater pattern and I loved it. And I had this yarn on my spring knitting plans, which is the Witchfire Fibers Classic Sari and Organic Lingering Weight Merino non-superwash, which was in my spring knitting plans, and I was thinking about making a different sweater, but then I saw this sweater pattern come out for like a tester call, and I was like, ooh, that would be perfect. And so I applied, I was selected, and it's, oh my gosh, it's looking so good. So this is the Curator Sweater by Lily Pearsall from Curatorial Knits. She has a YouTube and she has an Instagram, and it's her first ever pattern. And I have done a lot of pattern testing for bigger designers last year, and I like the idea because I feel like sometimes like smaller designers, if it's your first pattern or your second pattern, like you are not pulling on as many people, if that makes sense. Like your tester pool may be a bit smaller because you haven't been designing. People may not want to test your first pattern because they don't really know what they're gonna get. But I figured I would, the fit on her looked so good. And it's a different construction than I've ever done before. Originally, I had tried to film this podcast a few days ago, but there's some major road construction. So this is a Saturday. I never film on Saturdays, but I had to wait for a day where there was no road construction. So originally when I was hoping to show you, I had my cables, I had it on a barber cord, and so I could try it on for you and show you the incredible fit on the shoulder, but I can't right now. But it is I don't really know actually what the construction is. It's not contiguous because there is no saddle shoulder. There's no saddle shoulder. I think she referred to it potentially as like a European shoulder. So I'll show you the back. So you start by knitting the back panel, and you have that kind of nice shoulder detail right here. And then when you get to about here, you pick up the two fronts and you knit the two fronts. And then before you get to about maybe here, and so before you even connect in the front, you pick up along that band that you've just created for the fronts, like the front and the right front. And so you pick up along this band here, and then you start working. First you're working flat because you're not yet joined in the round, but you start working the sleeve cap as part of the whole sweater. And I was like, that looks new and that looks fun, and I loathe German short rows on shoulders. I don't know what it is. I have no problem doing German short rows on the back neck of a sweater, but to do it on a shoulder to make room for the arm, I hate it. So I was like, this is like a set in sleeve without actually having to do so many any short rows on the sleeve. And it fits incredibly. I am sad actually right now that I can't show you in person how it's fitting, but like this cable is sitting exactly at the peak of my shoulder, and then the sleeve starts here. So it really is like an incredible fit. I will put in a photo of me trying it on. I've made a couple accidental modifications to this. The first one is that the cable, I've carried it down the body of the sweater, which is not in the pattern. You're supposed to stop the cable when you connect under the sleeve, under the arm. I just assumed that you kept going with it, and so I kept going with it. And it's fine. It's not centered, so it's not, because it's coming down the front, when you connect under the sleeve, it's not centered under the arm, so it's slightly in front. And so as I'm doing some waist shaping, I'm only doing waist shaping along the back side of that cable, just to kind of bring it closer to being centered. But I'm not doing a huge amount of waist shaping. No, sorry, I thought I made a mistake, but I didn't. So yeah, that's like one accidental modification. The other modification is that instead of doing a tapered sleeve, I've knit a straight sleeve, which fits great. Because of like the set-in sleeve construction of this shoulder, it has a really nice fit up here, and so the whole sleeve fits really well. It is relaxed, especially along the bottom, but it's not so relaxed that I'm gonna dip my sleeves in my soup. The third modification isn't really a modification. I just opted to do regular ribbing rather than twisted ribbing, because my ribbing is pretty tidy. Like it looks pretty good, and I just didn't want to bother doing the twisted rib. So for this sweater, I am testing the size 6. I'm knitting it on 4.5mm needles. I'm using a slightly different weight than she does. Her original sample, and a lot of the testers are using yarn from Sondra Yarn Co., and they're using the sport weight version and then a mohair. I am using a fingering weight yarn and a Sari. So my base yarn is slightly thinner than what they recommend, but my lace weight is slightly thicker than what they recommend. So it ends up being pretty much exactly the same. I've met gauge really easily on this pattern, and this is one that I am loving. I love the color. It's not gonna get anywhere this year though. I mean, it will this calendar year, but not this winter. So like, I don't think, like maybe I could get a day or two if it cools off again, but I think it'll be finishing it for the test knit in May, and then just probably putting it in my closet and then being able to pull it out next fall and being able to wear it and be like, oh yeah, this is nice. But I think for now, because especially with the Sari is so, it's toasty. I find Sari warmer than mohair. I'm not sure if that is everybody's experience with it, but for me, like I put on something with Sari and if I'm inside, I get warm immediately. So I don't think I'm gonna be able to get any days wear out of this before it gets too warm. But I am committed to finishing it, because even though it's a winter sweater, I really want to get it done kind of like, yeah, I would like to actually get this one done maybe by the end of April, and then to be able to put it aside, finish up my last, my Aiode sweater if I don't finish that up this month also, and then be able to move on to my summery whips. Okay, so my last whip is probably the one that I am most excited for, and I also think I might have to rip it out. So I'm hoping by talking about it with you, I will decide what I'm gonna do with it. But I am making, oh, I dropped my yarn. I am making a heavily modified Halibut sweater by Caitlin Hunter. So this is a pattern that is incredibly popular. Lots of people have either, like, I think everyone has seen it. Lots of people have knit it. It has been on my to knit list for a really long time. But I hate how that sweater fits on pretty much everybody. I already don't really like circular yoke sweaters very much. I've made 2 circular yoke sweaters. One of them I don't really like the fit of, and the other one I love the fit of, but that's because it has raglan increases here to kind of provide some good shaping. And the way that the regular Halibut sweater is knit has like an incredibly deep yoke, and it just, I don't want any part of that. But I'm like, I'm finally far enough along in my knitting skills that I was like, I can figure out how to modify this pattern for a raglan. So that's what I've been doing. I am using Explore Knits and Fibers Earthy DK. I have 2 skeins of this color, which is called Forage, and I have 2 skeins, sorry, I dropped it. 2 skeins of this color, which is Fantasy. I bought this at their in-stock update back in February or March or whenever that was, and I had a different pattern in mind, but the photos that I was looking at was of course of the super wash version, so they were much more vibrant. These are really quite earthy and a bit muted, and I didn't think that it would be a good fit for the other pattern that I had my eye on. But then I think that it fits perfectly with a fish sweater, right? Because that is so cute. So this is where I'm at. I'm about 2/3 of the way through the chart, and because I changed it from circular yoke to a raglan, it means that because you know, the way that the circular yoke is done is like a wedge. So you start out and it's, let's say, it's not, but let's say it's 10 stitches for the chart repeat. And then as you increase, by the time you get to the end of the chart, it's, let's say, 30, right? So it's increasing out like that. In order to make this into a raglan, I had to take that final stitch repeat and kind of follow it all the way down, which meant that there was a lot of extra space. And partially I didn't like how that looked, and also I did not want to carry my floats that long. So I kind of was like, what can I add? Look at my little lobster. I think it's focusing. It's kind of sometimes hard to tell with this, but I added little lobsters. I am obsessed with my lobsters. Like, they're just so cute. I love them so much. And then right now I'm, just kind of starting the body of the fish, but I've done the tail. So I can't go into too much detail about how exactly I modified it, because there was like math that was based on, you know, the size of the chart. But what I did is I took a sweater that I've made in the past that I did really like, a raglan style sweater that I've made. I kind of measured how wide it is around the bust, and I measured how long it is on the raglan. And then from there I did some math based on how much, like my stitch gauge and my row gauge and the rate of increase that I'm gonna need to do. So I figured out, you know, how quickly on the raglans I'm gonna need to increase for the body and for the sleeves. I also added German short rows here at the back before the color work to make it fit well, and I've got a mock neck. It's gonna so here, let me talk through my uncertainty. I don't know if a raglan style sweater is the right call for this, because I kind of think having this raglan seam down the front, it kind of is a bit disruptive to the flow of the color work. So I think what I may try to do, and this is just kind of like a creative project. It's fun. It's like a bit of a puzzle. And then as I'm knitting it, I've really liked watching the pattern increase and grow. And I also, I really want to love the finished object. And so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to rip this out, and then I'm going to figure out how I can make it fit into the numbers for the Kintra sweater. So the Kintra sweater is designed by Rebecca Clow. It came out, I believe, in January or February. I test knit that one. I loved the fit of mine so much that I made one for my fiance, and he loves that also. And it's from here up, it's a circular yoke, and then from there it has raglan shaping along in the body and no extra circular yoke increases, so that it increases on the body but not on the sleeves, and it creates like the perfect fit. And so what I'm thinking is that if I can figure out how to turn this pattern to fit in that type of style, then it's like the best of both worlds, because I can have the color work all across the front, And then there would just be kind of like, as I'm increasing under the sleeves, there would be no color work there, but that's fine because it's under the sleeves. And then I think that it would be a really good mix of like making sure that I like the fit of the body and the sleeves, and it would also have like a continuous color work all the way around. And I think that it would be way better. So let me know if you have any opinions on this, because I've been mulling it over for a while. I almost ripped this out a couple weeks ago, but I really wanted to show it to you first because it's so cute. This lobster motif just gives me life. I love it so much. I am knitting this on 4mm needles, and my stitch gauge is about 21 or 22 stitches per 10 centimeters. The sizes that I'm aiming for are very different from the sizes of the actual Halibut pattern. So I'm actually aiming, like I want something really oversized. So I'm aiming for a finished bust circumference of about 145 centimeters, which would be about 25 centimeters of positive ease on me, which is more than I normally go for. But I kind of was thinking that I have a sweater that has a huge amount of positive ease, and I really like how like cozy and wearable it is just for lounging around the house. And I was kind of thinking that I would try to create another garment that's kind of in that same vibe. If I go the route where I'm ripping this out and putting it into a circular yoke pattern, I will go for something with less positive ease. But the way that it is right now, like it would be the size that I want, but I think you just lose the magic of the color work in this raglan. So yeah, let me know if you have any thoughts. Finally so when I'm done my Curator sweater and my Aiode sweater, those are the two winter projects that I'm gonna finish up hopefully in April, but maybe into May. My Halibut sweater is gonna be like a longer term, like no deadlines type of thing. So I won't worry about getting that done really quickly, but I have two patterns that I'm kind of considering casting on. The first is with this Sunday Fiber Co. Fielding, which is a fingering weight silk and linen blend. Well, it's a light fingering. I started knitting something in this a while ago and it just didn't turn out, so I have like a half-made project that I'm going to be ripping out, but so I have 3 skeins, so one of them is still caked up. And with this one, I actually think I might make the Cumulus O-neck by Petit knit. I don't think I've ever actually made a Petit knit garment pattern, but that one, I really like how it looks. Like I like that it's simple. I also like that it is a raglan and not a drop shoulder, because what I was finding when I was working with this yarn last time was when I was working it flat, there is a little bit of rowing out that's noticeable, and it didn't block out. And so I was thinking, okay, like a raglan's gonna have a little bit of working back and forth for the German short rows, but then apart from that, it would just be in the round. And so I think that maybe that would be a good fit, and it would fit the gauge, which is another one, is that because this is a light fingering, it is 450 meters per 115 grams. Anyway, so it might just be a regular fingering. I don't actually know, but I was working with it previously on a gauge that was 31 stitches per 10 centimeters, and I thought that had like a really nice polished look to it. And the Cumulus O-neck, I believe, is 28 stitches, so it's close, and it would be easily, and because it's a raglan, I could easily modify it to be 31 stitches. So that's one idea. The next idea is one that you've sort of heard before, but it's with this Ovis Etc. Igne in the color Curry, and this is a wool, silk, and ramie blend. And again, it's a fingering weight yarn. So my initial plan was hold it double and do the Kylie Pullover by Irene. But then when I was thinking about it, like I love the pattern, but I'm already working on like a lace pattern, and I've worked a few cable patterns recently. But I also kind of wonder if by holding it double, you kind of like, I want something lightweight. And so I think by holding it double, I'm losing some of that quality of a summer yarn because it's then just going to be heavier and thicker. My other idea is doing the Market Henley by Claire Jackson. Her designing name is Perfectly Knotted. The only thing with that one is that this is my swatch when I've perfectly met gauge. And I'm really hoping that you can see, but it is quite holy. Like it's more open than I want it to be, right? So then that is with a 3.75 millimeter needle. This is with a 3 millimeter needle. So it's a lot more dense and the stitches are quite crisp. I don't think I would want it quite, like I think I would maybe do a 3.25 millimeter needle, but I have apparently lost my 3.25 millimeter needle, so I can't do a swatch for it right now. But I like this fabric more. So I think just by going up 0.25 would just make it slightly airier and a little bit less dense than this one is, and I think that would be perfect. But then this one requires a little bit more math. And I did a poll on Instagram, and like the overwhelming response, like 2/3 of people said I should knit the Kylie Pullover by Irene. And I do still want to do that. I just don't think that this is the yarn to do it in, right? Because I have bought a fingering weight yarn, and my intention with this is light and summery and like wear it to the beach type of thing. And I think that this is going to be too warm, especially because 60% of this is wool. So yeah, it's 60% wool, 20% silk, and 20% rami. And rami is a cellulose fiber, but like it's like quite a lot of this is wool. And even though the Kylie Pullover has the lace eyelets, I just think it would be too warm. And I think that this would be better held single, like this would be better and more drapey if I knit it in a yarn that had more plant fiber or more silk fiber in it. And I think that this would be perfect. Like it would be so cute. It would be nice. So I think I'm gonna do this one. I just have to go get a 3.25 millimeter needle and swatch and make sure and figure out the math for what I need to do. But I am not letting myself cast on either of these until I finish my Aiode and my Curator Sweater, because I already have the Oleander pullover, so I can't have, I'm whipped out. No more whips. No more whips. Gotta cast off a couple things first. So yeah, so that's my plans over the next month or so. Thanks for joining me. Check out the information for the knit along, and if you want to like and subscribe to the video or the channel, I love to hear from you in the comments, and you can always check back in for prizes and stuff at the end of the month. So bye.